Boker Tov, good morning. I hope this message finds you well. I want to share with you a quick idea. This week's parashat Vayikra, which discusses the korbanot, sacrifices. Now, one of the primary ingredients which were prohibited from bringing onto the Mizbeach is, very interestingly and pertinently, the ingredient of chametz, seor, sourdough, which is an intense form of chametz. The Torah tells us in parashat Vayikra, lo te'aseh chametz ki chol seor. Chametz and seor are prohibited from being brought in the Beit HaMikdash. There were some exceptions, shteh lechem, the korban todah, but otherwise we don't bring leavened bread into the Beit HaMikdash. Now here's the question: what's so wrong? What's so bad about chametz? Why do we destroy chametz during this time of the year with Pesach? Why do we prohibit it from being brought on the Mizbeach and the Beit HaMikdash? And commentators explain that chametz is associated with gavhut haruach. Chametz is associated with arrogance, with boastfulness. Just like bread, it leavens, it expands, it grows. So too, we have the capacity to become arrogant and boastful, and to think too much of ourselves, to think that we are much greater than we actually are. But in truth, we're really just full of hot air. And this is captured in a tefillah that Rabbi Alexandri used to add to the end of his Amidah. And we're told as follows: Rabbi Alexandri would daven to Hashem and say to Hashem, Hashem, Yibon ha'olamim, galui v'yadua lefanecha sheretzonenu lasad retzoncha. Hashem, you know that we would love to fulfill your will, but what's preventing us? Two things. The two things are seor shebe'isa, the dough, the yeast that's in the dough. This is chametz, arrogance. But then he adds something else, which is also interesting. He says v'shibud malchiot. What's shibud malchiot? This is the fact that the nations of the world have control over us, that we don't have sovereignty as a Jewish people. But I'd like to suggest otherwise, that this can be interpreted metaphorically, and then it actually combines very nicely with seor shebe'isa. Seor shebe'isa is for a person to think that they're great, that they're much better than they actually are. Whereas shibud malchiot, and this is basically captured in the notion of the Maharsha, shibud malchiot makes us feel worse about ourselves, makes us think that we're worth nothing because we're trampled upon by the nations. What do we learn from here? We learn that two of the cardinal flaws of human being, what causes us to sin, to make mistakes, to make bad decisions in life, is one, when we think too much of ourselves, and two, when we think too little of ourselves, when we belittle ourselves, when we don't recognize the great value and potential that we have. So this Shabbat, as we read through the Korbanot and we learn about these psukim, it's so important that a person recognizes their strengths, their weaknesses, that they have an accurate picture of who they are and what they are capable of accomplishing. One shouldn't think too much of themselves, but also not too little of themselves. Wishing you a beautiful Shabbat ahead. Kol Tov.